I've outlined how a new Conservative government will introduce the Get Ahead fiscal update that will put our green home renovation tax credit, green public transit tax credit, children's fitness tax credit, and children's arts and learning tax credit into law by January 1st. I will tear down the trade barriers between provinces by convening a meeting of Canada's First Ministers on January 6th to kickstart negotiations for a provincial free trade deal, creating more jobs and more prosperity. We will start the work towards creating a single tax return for the people of Quebec, and we will bring in stiff penalties of fines up to $20,000 for politicians who violate the Conflict of Interest Act, as Justin Trudeau has done on 2 separate occasions.
As part of my 100-day action plan, I have said that a new Conservative government will present an economic update that will offer our tax credit for green housing, our tax credit for public transit, our tax credit for phys ed courses for children, and our tax credit for arts and other activities for children. Starting on January 1st, I will get rid of trade barriers between the provinces. I will convene a meeting of the First Ministers on January 6th in order to create jobs. I will immediately begin to negotiate with the Quebec government to establish a single tax return, and I will impose severe penalties of up to $20,000 on politicians that violate the Conflict of Interest Act, as Trudeau did.
Trying to salvage his job by doing a coalition deal with the NDP. But this is the coalition Canadians cannot afford. Higher taxes, more deficits, fewer jobs, and much less money in your pockets. It is clear that Justin Trudeau will pay any price to stay in power, and he's using your money to pay it. And there is perhaps no better example of Trudeau making Canadians pay more than his carbon tax. His carbon tax that does nothing to lower emissions, but instead only makes everyday essentials like gasoline, groceries, and home heating more expensive. And with the NDP calling the shots in a Trudeau-led coalition government, there's no telling how much higher it will go. We already know that Trudeau is planning to increase the carbon tax, and at $102 a ton, the price the Parliamentary Budget Officer says is needed to reach Canada's emissions reductions targets, the impact on families will be huge. It will add 31 cents a litre to the price of gas and $469 to the cost of natural gas. All told, families here in Brampton and across Ontario will be on the hook for at least $1,150 more in household costs. And that's before Jagmeet Singh and the NDP have their say as Trudeau's coalition partners and force him to hike it even higher. It is truly the coalition you cannot afford. I've been consistent since I became the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada that my first piece of legislation as Prime Minister will be to repeal Trudeau's carbon tax. And today I'm pleased to announce that as part of my 100-day action plan, I will introduce and pass the Carbon Tax Repeal Act. There is no time to lose. We will use every available legislative tool to overcome any obstruction and delay so that we pass this legislation on time. Now, Trudeau's carbon tax will be history by January 1st, 2020.
And today I'm happy to announce that as part of my 100-day action plan, I will introduce and pass the Carbon Tax Repeal Act. There is no time to be lost. We will use every legislative tool at our disposal to counter any obstruction and delay and ensure that this measure gets passed in time. Trudeau's carbon tax will be history on January 1st, 2020.
This means that families in Alberta will never have to pay the carbon tax at all. And it means that families in Saskatchewan, New Brunswick, and Manitoba, families right here in Ontario, will get relief from the Trudeau carbon tax in time for the coldest winter months, putting between $200 and $400 back into your family's pockets starting next year. Now, in addition, as part of our 100-day action plan, we will pass legislation to remove the GST from home energy costs. We know that rising home energy costs are a particular burden on low and middle class families. Justin Trudeau believes we should punish families for turning up the thermostat on a cold winter day. I do not. In Canada, heating your home in the winter isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. And that's why we will take the GST off of home energy bills before the cold winter weather truly sets in.
Furthermore, as part of our 100-day action plan, we will pass a legislative measure to eliminate the GST on home heating bills. We know that increased energy costs are a heavy burden for low and medium income families. Justin Trudeau thinks we should punish families because they need to heat their homes in the winter. Not me. In Canada, heating your home is not a luxury, it's a necessity. That's why we will eliminate the GST on residential home heating bills before winter.
This will save the Canadian families over $100 per year on their energy bills. And for the average family right here in Ontario, these two measures will start putting $358 per year back in your pocket right away. I need to be clear though, only a strong Conservative majority deliver these savings. I am the only leader determined to help lower and middle class families heat their homes. A Trudeau, NDP, perhaps Green Party coalition will act immediately to drive up the carbon tax to historic heights. Because we need to understand how the carbon tax works. Making filling your gas tank or heating your home unaffordable is not a side effect of the carbon tax. It's the entire point of the carbon tax. But we know that you don't have to hurt lower and middle class families to fight climate change. There are better alternatives to the carbon tax. And that's why I will instruct officials to begin implementing measures to fight global climate change as outlined in our real plan to protect our environment. This will include displacing dirty foreign energy sources with Canadian clean energy and exporting Canadian green technology to reduce emissions around the world. We will deliver the first steps in our plan to take the climate change fight global, starting in year one. And we will do so working closely with our provincial partners, respecting their constitutional right to make their own decisions. A carbon tax is not the only way to fight global climate change. It's certainly not the best way. It is time to turn the page on Justin Trudeau's failed carbon tax and deliver a real climate change plan that lowers global emissions and lets Canadians keep more of their hard-earned money.
The choice in this election is clear. A Trudeau NDP coalition that will increase the carbon tax, adding thousands of dollars to your monthly bills, or a majority Conservative government that will eliminate the carbon tax immediately, putting more money in your pockets so that you can get ahead.
So the choice in this election is crystal clear. A Trudeau NDP coalition that will work together to send the carbon tax through the roof, adding thousands of dollars more to your household bills. Or a Conservative majority government that will eliminate the carbon tax right out of the gate, putting more money in your pockets so you can get ahead. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Happy to take your questions.
Morning, Mr. Scheer. Glenn McGregor, CTV News. Last night in your interview with Lisa LaFlamme, you said the party that gets the most seats in an election, not necessarily winning a majority, should be the one that has the right to govern. You are a former Speaker of the House. You know the conventions of a Westminster Parliament that allows the incumbent party to have the first crack at forming government. Are you saying that that precedent should be thrown out?
Obviously, what we are asking Canadians for is a strong Conservative majority mandate. It is the case that the party that wins the most seats in modern Canadian history has been the party that forms the government.
It is clear that we're asking Canadians for a majority mandate, and it's also clear that in the modern history of Parliament, the party that wins the most seats forms the government.
1 in 5 Canadians over the age of 15 is living with a disability. A lot of those people don't feel their issues are being heard in this campaign. Are you committed to implementing some of the provisions in the Accessible Canada Act that was passed by Parliament?
Yes, absolutely. And I would note that we are the only party that had an entire day's worth of announcements on specifically addressing people with disabilities. We made commitments to make it easier to qualify for the disability tax credit, something that Justin Trudeau's government made harder, especially for people with type 1 diabetes. So we're absolutely committed to improving the lives for people with disabilities.
Bonjour, Monsieur Scheer, Philippe Vincent Foisy de Radio-Canada.
Radio-Canada. This morning again, Justin Trudeau is accusing you of wanting to make cuts. I know that you said you want to cut foreign aid, but he's also saying you want to cut the public service. It's not clear whether there will be cuts or job losses. Perhaps you could commit to say that there will be no job losses. Yes, absolutely. It's not a surprise that Justin Trudeau is continuing to say these lies. There will be no cuts to the public service, and what we've said is that we will eliminate waste, such as March Madness and that sort of thing. So our commitment to public servants is clear. We will protect their jobs. I'd like to know what the difference is between you and Stephen Harper. There are a lot of promises that are very similar, a lot of measures that are very similar. What's the difference? Well, I have my own style and my own approach, and my platform has a lot of new, innovative ideas in it to put more money in the pockets of Canadians, increases to the RESP, tax credits for new tech companies. So there are many aspects of our platform that are very different from that of the former government. And it's clear that with our platform, Canadians will have more money in their pockets.
Sure. I've got my own style and approach. I'm writing our party's chapter now as leader of this party. I'm very excited by this platform. There are a lot of new and innovative ideas like boosting the RESP, the green patent tax credit. So this platform is new and exciting with lots of innovative ideas to leave more money in the pockets of Canadians to help them get ahead.
Michael Couture from Global National. I wanted to ask you on gay marriage. You keep saying that society has moved on and you've moved on. How has your opinion of gay marriage evolved?
As I said, I've always stood up for the equality rights of all Canadians, and I support the rights of same-sex couples to access the marriage under the law in Canada. That is something that our party has moved on from, society has moved on from, and I'll always fight for the equality rights of all Canadians.
But your
I will always fight for the rights of all Canadians, including the LGBTQ community. The decision was made back in 2005, and I've moved on, and so has my party.
A same-sex marriage is the same as a conventional union?
Of course, I believe in the equality of rights of all Canadians, and in Canada we have equal marriage now, and of course I uphold that and recognize that.
It's clear that in Canada we have equal marriage, and I will support it.
Your platform specifies certain infrastructure projects as priorities, but you're extending the overall package of infrastructure spending from 12 to 15 years. How are Canadians to know whether their projects are going to be the ones that get punted down the line?
So we've made the commitment that we will honor all existing agreements, all projects that have been greenlit by the different levels of government will continue to proceed. In addition to that, we've identified priorities that help reduce commute times. So, for example, in Vancouver, that means the Massey tunnel replacement. Here in the GTA, we are the only parties that are committed. We are the only party that is committed. I'm the only leader that has made a firm commitment for the Ontario line and the Yonge expansion. The other parties have not made that commitment. In fact, the Liberal Member of Parliament, Adam Vaughan, the senior Liberal Member of Parliament, continues to criticize that plan. So it is quite clear that only a Conservative government will see those projects through. I have to note that it's the Parliamentary Budget Officer himself who pointed out that the Liberal infrastructure plan did not exist, and that up to 40% of the funds lapsed every year. So what we're saying is we're going to have a responsible plan that actually gets dollars out and shovels in the ground, and we're going to have the same exact amount of money spent on an overall basis as we move back to balanced budgets.
The platform seems to criticize Trudeau for exactly what you just said, for failing to get this money out the door. You could have said, we're going to get the money out the door faster. Instead, you're delaying it. Why did you make that choice? Did you not think you could have done any better in terms of spending it?
Again, what we're saying is we're recognizing that in order to have a proper framework in place that allows these projects to get to the point where they're ready to go, we are going to work with provinces and municipalities to do exactly that and have the overall same dollar amount as we get back to balanced budgets. But it's important to remember that this is the choice. The choice between Canadians is a Liberal NDP coalition that continues to rack up billions and billions of dollars worth of new debt. And that means that more and more of your tax dollar will go just to pay the interest on that debt. That's the NDP Liberal coalition plan. Our plan is to get back to balanced budgets over a responsible 5-year period of time, continuing to make investments in healthcare, education, and important social programs, and eliminating corporate welfare and eliminating $1.5 billion worth of corporate welfare, 25% of foreign aid spending, and eliminating waste in government spending like March Madness. That is a choice. Canadians can now make a clear choice on Monday, and I'm confident that they will choose a fiscal responsible plan that puts more money in their pocket.
It's clear that there is a clear choice between an NDP Liberal coalition that will increase deficits and increase taxes, and more of your money will have to pay interest on the debt, or a responsible plan to return to balanced budgets, and at the same time we leave more money in the pockets of Canadians.
Thousands of Canadians have died as a result of the opioid crisis, and some public health experts have warned that your specific policies could potentially result in additional deaths. So specifically, what would you do to prevent the death toll from rising when you're opposed to things like supervised injection sites?
Well, what we've said on injection sites is that there must be community engagement. There must be involvement from the community when governments decide to put these types of facilities in a community. That is something that Canadians support broadly. We are the only party that's also talking about recovery. So instead of just focusing on maintaining addictions, we want to start the process to ensure that there are services available to help get people off of these dangerous drugs, off of a lifetime of addiction. Specifically, we've also called for more inspections at our ports for shipments for goods coming in from China. That would also send a message to the government of China for some of their actions against our exports. It would also allow our border services agents to crack down on fentanyl and other opioids coming into Canada.
But how can you specifically talk about recovery when public health experts say that the reason people are dying is because the drug supply is tainted?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's exactly why adding additional inspections at our ports will help to eliminate some of the opioids that are coming into our communities. And addictions, recovery programs get people off of addiction so that they're not exposing themselves to dangerous drugs that could possibly be laced with things like fentanyl. So it's a balanced approach that actually tries to get people off of a lifetime of addictions. Nous avons une approche équilibrée entre
we have a balanced approach between increased inspections in order to block the entry of opioids into Canada, and at the same time investing in services to put a stop to addiction. La Presse Canadienne, you say that there will be no job losses in the public service, but you are planning $14 billion worth of cuts over 5 years in a category called Other Operating Expenses. You talked about putting an end to March Madness, but $14 billion is a great deal of money. Do you think the public service will believe you when you say there won't be any cuts? Absolutely. Our platform has been costed by the Parliamentary Budget Office, and we say in our costed platform that we will maintain the same level of jobs. So all of that is part of the figures. You can find the figures on waste. Now, with respect to cannabis legalized a year ago, we are hearing that there is still a black market operating. Do you not intend to recriminalize that drug, and what will you do to put an end to the black market? Well, that's a good example of something that Justin Trudeau said, but that didn't happen. We will ensure that our police forces have the necessary resources to target drug traffickers. We are the only party that talks about targeting criminal gangs that sell illegal drugs. So we will continue with that approach to ensure that our penalties and laws and resources are all there to target the people who traffic illegal drugs.
Sure. So we are committed to making sure that our police forces have the resources they need to tackle illegal drugs. That's something we're going to continue to do, and we are the only party with a platform piece talking about illegal gangs. And we know that a lot of the black market for different types of drugs are controlled by gangs, and we're the only party that's talking about increasing penalties, bringing in bail reform, and listing gangs in the criminal code.
Good morning, Mr. Scheer. Olivia Stefanovich with CBC News. Earlier today, you warned that a re-elected Liberal government may decriminalize hard drugs, but the experts in the addictions field say that to tackle the opioid epidemic, the best way is to treat addictions like a health issue and not a criminal one. So I'm just wondering what it is about the evidence that you don't agree with.
Well, we do not believe in decriminalizing hard drugs. That is a choice that Canadians can make on Monday. It's clear that Justin Trudeau and many of his MPs have this as something they're looking at. It's something that their members of Parliament on the Health Committee endorse. It's something that many of their candidates are calling for. It's something that their convention passed as well. So we believe that the focus should be on recovery programs. That's where we're going to put our investments, not decriminalizing hard drugs.
But en français?
That's a choice for Canadians on Monday. There are a lot of Liberal candidates that want to decriminalize hard drugs. The Liberal MP on the Health Committee voted in favor, and the Liberal Convention passed that. But we will continue to focus on programs to help people with addictions.
And treating addictions like a health issue, that they say that can help more than criminalizing. Are you trying to score political points instead of saving lives?
Not at all. Not at all. We believe that, of course, in listening to the health experts, and that's why we're focusing on recovery.
Good morning, Mr. Scheer. Stephanie Levitz, the Canadian Press. Can you tell me, what do you think is the single greatest international threat to Canada at the moment?
There are a lot of threats that Canadians have to take seriously. Obviously, there are continuing evidence of efforts to radicalize people here in Canada. We know that there are cyber threats against not just Canadian government departments, but against Canadian institutions as well. So that's something that we'll certainly be focusing on in government.
As a second question, the Trudeau government made a number of strides in the area of gender equity. They placed a priority on ensuring diversity of government appointments and gender-balanced cabinet, the G7 Women's Cabinet. I'm wondering which among those you'll continue with and which among those you'd roll back.
We'll always fight for equality rights of all Canadians and stand up for the rights of women. This is something that we believe in as Conservatives, the equality of all human beings. We'll continue to push for that, and that is something that Canadians can have confidence in.
Will you have a gender-balanced cabinet?
You know what? We will have a cabinet made up of highly qualified candidates. We will put the best people in the best jobs. We might even end up with more women in our cabinet, depending on the results of Monday's election.
We will ensure that our ministers are experienced and have the capacity and the experience to do the job, and we may have more than 50% women. It will depend on the results in Monday's election.
Katie Simpson, CBC News. You said at the start of your news conference in response to one of my colleagues' questions that recently there aren't examples of governments being able to hold the confidence in a province or wherever they are if they didn't win the most number of seats. But in BC, that's not the case. In 2017, the NDP, they don't hold the most number of seats, but they are in power. So my question to you is, you're a former Speaker of the House. You know the rules of Parliament. So do you recognize that holding power depends on winning and holding the confidence of the House of Commons?
It is quite clear that Justin Trudeau will try to do anything to stay on to power. But what I'm saying is that the party that wins the most seats should be able to form the government. And the other convention in modern Canadian politics is that a prime minister who enters into an election and comes out of that election with fewer seats than another party resigns. That is a modern convention in Canadian politics.
But that's not.
C'est la convention, c'est dans notre histoire moderne, c'est pour
the convention in our modern history is for the party who wins the most seats to form a government. And the other thing that is clear is that a prime minister who comes out of an election with fewer seats than another party resigns. That is also a modern convention.
Even though the rules allow for it, do you see a government that is formed that might not have the most number of seats? Do you see it as illegitimate?
I believe that we have put forward a platform before Canadians, and on Monday we will find out what Canadians vote for. I am very optimistic that we will win Monday's election with a very strong mandate. We're asking Canadians for a majority mandate to prevent an NDP Liberal coalition that will run massive deficits and raise their taxes. It is clear that in modern Canadian history, the party with the most seats forms the government, and that a prime minister who comes out of an election with fewer seats than another party resigns. That is the convention in modern Canadian history.
Good morning, Cynthia Mulligan from City News. Do you owe Doug Ford an apology? People inside his government say you've thrown him under the bus.
I have been focused on federal issues, putting forward our platform for Canadians and Ontarians. And one thing I can tell you is that the people of Ontario understand the damage that Kathleen Wynne and Dalton McGuinty did to this province. And they also know that the very same people who were instrumental in those governments are now working for Justin Trudeau and are following the same playbook. Massive deficits, tax hikes to pay for it, scandals, and corruption. And I am confident that the people in Ontario will limit the damage done to one term at the federal level.
But you've been campaigning like Doug Ford is a liability to you. Have you actually been a liability to him? Have you hurt him politically?
I don't agree with that assessment at all. We've been traveling across this province, highlighting our platform, our measures that will leave more money in the pockets of all Canadians, including the people of Ontario. We're talking about important investments in things like the Ontario Line and the Young expansion, making our communities safer by going after illegal gang members and people who traffic illegal firearms and illegal drugs. Those are issues that speak directly to the people of this province. We're going to continue to do that for the next 4 days and then implement them after Monday's election. Oui, mais c'est
Mr. Ford made a decision weeks ago to focus on provincial issues. It's clear that there's a lot of work to be done after the governments of Kathleen Wynne and Dalton McGuinty. Ontario voters know that the same people who worked for Kathleen Wynne and Dalton McGuinty are now working for Justin Trudeau and are following the same playbook. So Canadians will have a choice on Monday, and I'm confident that they will choose to put a stop to the policies of the people who created so much damage here in Ontario.
With the pointer. We have the NDP committing to a hospital and a university campus in Brampton specifically, and we have at least one Brampton Conservative candidate committing to the LRT in Brampton as well, the Huron-Ontario Main LRT. Will you, as leader of the Conservative Party, commit to a hospital, a university campus, and the LRT?
What I can tell you is, and I've had a conversation with the mayor of Brampton, Patrick Brown, where I made it clear to him that a Conservative government will make sure that Brampton gets its fair share of things like infrastructure dollars and money to make our community safer. That's one of the things that he's highlighted, that Brampton has been shortchanged under the Liberal federal government, and we're going to address that and fix that.
So we also had you come about a week ago and to Mississauga, and one of my colleagues asked you what sort of funding towards the Mississauga's demands for the election will be coming from you. You said at the time, stay tuned. Well, now I have to ask, will you also be committing to restore the downtown loop to the Mississauga portion of the LRT?
We are committed to making sure that both Mississauga and Brampton get their fair share of infrastructure dollars. This is something that I've made very clear to both Mayor Brown and in the past when I've had conversations with Mayor Crombie as well. Having spent a lot of my summers in Mississauga taking the number 8 bus and the GO train into Union Station, I believe fully in public transit. I understand the benefits it brings to Mississauga, and a federal Conservative government will absolutely ensure that important projects are built to improve the lives of the people of Mississauga, to shorten commute times and make it easier for people to get home to their families.
This is Surjit Singh Flora from Peel Daily. All the leaders, none of the leaders is talking about the Bill 21. So what is your stand, Will?
So I've made it very clear that the Conservative government will not intervene in the court case surrounding that bill, nor will we pursue any of those types of things at the federal level. Alors, encore, je dis qu'on va pas intervenir.
Again, I will say that we will not intervene, and we will follow it at the federal level.
Thanks so much for being here.
Boss, this way. Yeah. Mr. Scheer, this way.